So you're in a career that doesn't feel aligned for you, but you want to shift into something that does feel aligned to you. First and foremost, you have to feel aligned within because your career and everything else is reflecting you back to you. So something I did in my career as I was pivoting, when I was really unhappy, I realized that the best things and the most aligned things were not going to come from anger, resentment, frustration, and escapism. So I worked on myself first. I used the tools. I used somatic tools. I used therapy. I used coaches to help me understand internal alignment. And that means, what does Shabnam like to do? What does Lauren like to do? What does she enjoy? What makes her happy? What makes her unhappy? What really grinds her gears? What are her core values as a person? You're defining them, not your job.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Naked Truth with Lauren Season 2. Welcome back if you're a Season 1 listener, and welcome for the first time if you're tuning in for the first time. We are going to be talking all about the messy realities of navigating your 20s this season, and I am promising you real, stripped-down conversations about work, friendship, dating, self-worth, and the growing pains that no one warns you about at this age. Hopefully, you will feel a little less alone after listening. I'm your host, Lauren, a 29-year-old professional living in DC, passionate about creating spaces for open conversations and building genuine community. And I am so glad you're here. Thank you so much to our Season 2 podcast sponsors, Kelly Miller, Marika and Batman Pierce, Pauline Shu, and Jenny Porter. I couldn't do this without you. Have you ever been sitting at your desk at work, wondering if you're actually cut out for this high-pressure life? Today's guest, who I met at a local contrast therapy mastermind for entrepreneurs, totally gets it. Shabnam Khan spent 8 years on the front lines as a critical care and travel registered nurse. But while she was busy saving lives, her own anxiety was running the show behind the scenes. Her anxiety stemmed from imposter syndrome, workplace bullying, a lack of staying present, and toxic work environments. Needing a big change, she discovered the power of sound therapy and breath work, leading her to found her brand, Khansciously Healing and Wellness Services. Now she's on a mission to help others reconnect with themselves in grounded and transformative ways. She currently works full-time in patient education while also creating immersive healing experiences. Get ready for a real, messy storytelling episode about hitting a wall, reclaiming your peace, and learning how to breathe through the chaos. Welcome to the pod, Shabnam.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and excited to talk to you and to everyone that's listening.
So, to start at a high level, what's been your high and low of the week so far?
Thanks for asking that. So this week was a little bit emotionally dense. So my high of the week was on Monday morning. I had a really challenging morning that I just felt like I could not get ahead of. You know, when something happens in your day or in your morning specifically, that just feels like it already kind of messed with your energy. So now, are you going to let that dictate the rest of your day? Ideally, no. But then something else happens, and then something else happens, and then something else happens. And I ended up like really using my tools, you know, breathing, prayer, meditation, and shifted my entire day.
Wow.
And normally I would just let the emotions pass and the energy pass, like for however long it takes. But I got so serious about not wanting to feel that way for the rest of the day that I like even verbally said out loud, like, I am not going to spend the rest of my day like this. I also made some cacao, which is really, really raw. It's made from the cocoa bean. It has a lot of really good healthy properties and helps to uplift our mood. But I think I just want to highlight, like, there's so many tools that we have in our life to like regulate our nervous system. And it was really celebratory for me to be able to like see them work in real time and just have like such an amazing day for the rest of the day. Ended up being one of the best days of the month.
Whoa, that's crazy. That is so cool. I love that because I definitely know what you're talking about. And I sometimes, if I feel behind in the mornings, could just feel that way for the rest of the day and like let it affect my whole day.
Yeah, definitely. And then my low for the week, I think it would probably be that my tags are expired and I just have so many car things to take care of right now. My tags are expired. I need my brakes done. I need an oil change. And I need to get a couple things done on the car before I will pass safety inspection. And then like my juicer broke. Like there's just all these like adulting tasks, little things. I got to make a doctor's appointment that is sitting on my to-do list. So that's giving low.
It's giving low. I think there's so many people who are listening right now who can relate. No one tells you how hard adulting is when you own everything and have to take care of your own bills and the car thing and your car payments. And then if you move, the inspection and changing your tags and getting your license at the DMV, all of that stuff. And it takes time.
No, totally. Because I did carve out the time and went and got the safety inspection. And then they told me that, oh, you have to go do all these things. So I was like, okay, I need to find my next window of time, to carve out the time and be present with it and not be anxious as you're moving through the day trying to get things done. I want to be fully present as much as I can be.
I have some adulting tasks I've been pushing off too. And one today that I actually tried to get Claude Cowork to help me with as an experiment was researching the different health insurance plans, because I realized that I qualify for Medicaid, but I've been paying for my own individual health insurance, which is like astronomical. And so I want to see if I can save money. And I'm just not familiar with the Medicaid system and the providers, et cetera. And I've had to, in the back of my mind and on my to-do list, do this research. But I'm like, I don't want to do the research. It seems boring.
Totally. We live in a really good place for people who are on assistance type of programs because Northern Virginia and DC, I'm not too familiar with Maryland, but we have so many healthcare resources that even if you are on a like government funded program, there's still a lot of people for you to be able to see and access, which is not true for a lot of other states.
That's really good to know. I did not know that. So thank you for
Yeah.
sharing. But anyway, the main topic of this episode is workplace anxiety and your story about overcoming it and the tools that you've used in your life. So I want to start with you taking us back to the peak of your workplace anxiety. Like, what was happening? What did your internal world look like on a day-to-day basis?
So I reflected on this question a lot, and I've really tried to go back to the version of me that was experiencing that. But to be honest, it's layers. Like I really could not put my finger on a picture perfect story of it. It really was layers. And my first significant memory in the workplace specifically was my very first job as a nurse. I was so anxious to the point where I would be at work all day. I would never feel like I was in my body. But I didn't have those words even to know I don't feel like I'm in my body. I don't even know what I am. And then I would go home and I would sleep and I would have dreams about being at work. Nurses work 12-hour shifts. So I would go home around like 8, 8:30, sometimes 9 if the shift ran late, go to bed and wake up again at 5 o'clock in the morning, go back to work. And so it's like I would never actually have a break because it's in my waking state and my dream state. And it did get better over time. It really did. But that's my first memory of like having that much anxiety be so present running my day.
Was it like 3 12-hour shifts a week?
Yeah. Yeah. But when you first start out, you're also in orientation. So sometimes you have extra classes that you have to attend. You might be staying after, coming in early, but you typically work 3 12-hour shifts. You can rotate days and nights. You can work one shift and then be only off one day and then back to like, it is a crazy schedule. And when you first start out, you're actually working another person's schedule because they're training you. So I had a lot of contributing factors to my anxiety at the time. You just have like so many different things and you're new in the workplace. So how do you even feel like you have a voice or that you have a say or that you have an identity in that space when you have another person's schedule, their personality, the environment itself? So it was a lot just consuming me at the time and it ran me day and night.
That is a lot. And then,
Yeah.
okay, so fast forward a couple years into your career, were you still having these anxious dreams about work?
No. So the first big step was being on my own. When I was off of orientation and I was no longer with the person that was training me, I had a huge difference just because I got to see myself. I got to be with myself. I got to be in this space of just self-awareness. It's harder to do when you have somebody like on top of you the entire time. And the person I was working with was extremely toxic. It's even really uncomfortable for me to like share this publicly because I never really told anyone what I was experiencing because one, you don't want to sound like you're complaining or that you're like a victim or that the other person's the problem. So even like sitting here now, all these years later, I can feel like discomfort in my body as I talk about it because in that moment, I just had to be quiet and deal with
Mm.
it. Or maybe not. That's what I thought I had to do. So
Mhm.
when I transitioned out of that and I was on my own, I really felt a lot of relief and I got to connect to actually what I was doing. You know, as a nurse, we're people. So actually working with the patients and doing the work and having self-awareness of what do I actually enjoy in this space. But you mentioned a couple years later, so I did go into travel nursing and then a new layer of anxiety was revealed.
What was that anxiety from when it came to travel nursing?
So I took a big leap and I thought I was going to Washington, D.C., but I actually went sign up to go to Seattle, Washington.
Oh my gosh, was that an accident or that was on purpose?
So I can't remember because it was so many years ago, but I don't remember at what point in the conversation the recruiter told me, oh, it's Washington State. Somewhere along the lines, I must have missed that she said Washington State. So I already applied and everything. And then when she said Washington State, I had such an open mind at the time that I was like, all right, let's just do this. I never even like explored or knew anything about Seattle, but I went for it. When I did it completely on my own, I like packed up my car. I taught myself how to travel, how to be a travel nurse, how to all of that. And then I flew there by myself. I shipped my car. So many things I would not recommend anyone do today. There's a much easier path.
Where were you coming from?
Delaware, complete other side.
Okay. Yeah.
So no one teaches you how to do these things. So I just went along this path. When I got there and actually did the move, I didn't know anybody and I didn't travel there with my family or friends or anything. So what happened was for the first time in my life, my body did not have co-regulation available to me through other people. I'm a first generation American. I'm a child of immigrants. I come from a very family centric culture. Even if you don't like your family, you're with them all the time.
Yeah.
I also come from a small town. I'm from Delaware. You know, I grew up with neighborhood friends. So I paint this picture and give all this context to say shifting yourself out of an environment that is at least around people you don't even realize, like almost isolation, is really shocking to the nervous system. At least for me, it was. And it came with a lot of anxiety in my day, even if it wasn't directly related to work. I just felt really anxious all the time. And I honestly didn't know why. I was really anxious. I was really depressed, but I grew a lot and I got to know myself very deeply. It was a beautiful first step of this self awareness journey.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I did some nomading when I worked remote, and this was after a couple years of working. So I graduated college, been working at Deloitte for like, I don't know, 6 months, and then the pandemic hits. And then we got sent out. And then I saw a bunch of my coworkers give up their expensive DC leases and either Airbnb hop around the country or move to a different state or move home, like whatever it was. And I love to travel. So I was like, oh, this is so cool. Might as well like do it while I can. And so I knew myself enough to be like, I don't think I can do this by myself. I think I would be very anxious and depressed if I was Airbnb hopping or traveling cross country by myself, especially like not having a workplace to go into was very isolating because it was just all work remote. So I wouldn't even have that like coworker layer or like relationships. So I recruited a buddy to do it with me. And the two of us did it together. So I had like a given friend in each city. And we definitely were living in places where I didn't know anyone else. So I can't imagine that takes like so much strength to just up and move to a place you've never been on the opposite side of the country, knowing no one and being like pretty fresh into the workplace. That takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, it was a really painful experience for me. It was so painful, but I really don't think I would take it back. I really don't even think I would take anybody with me because you gain so much by being by yourself in that space. You find new ground to anchor on and you discover a version of yourself that is like your soul almost, you know, even if you don't use those words or identify it that way. I think I really got to be with nature that you don't really get to see on the East Coast. The Pacific Northwest, I recommend any nature lovers to explore it because thinking about it makes me emotional how beautiful those mountains are, how beautiful the water is, how clean the air is. And I don't know if I would have been that immersed had I been with another person. So it's like all a journey. And I think it's really easy to stay in fear, or it's really easy to not take the plunge. But when you do, and you do spend your time alone, and you can still travel, you can still, like, I did go home to see my family. One of my really close friends got married in Aruba while I was there, and I flew there. I mean, you get to develop yourself through that experience. And I really wish all of us would do it, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, you learn so much about yourself and you grow, and I think mature a lot.
Yeah.
Several years later, post my nomading experience, I put on my vision board, it was 2024, to do a solo trip, to
Mhm.
really travel. And I traveled abroad. I traveled to Portugal, did that alone, and then sought out like an experience where I know I'd be surrounded by like-minded people because it was a surf camp. So it's something that like I specifically have been wanting to do. And it was a good destination for solo travelers. You know, we were living in tents on the beach or on the sand, and it was easy to meet people that way. It was kind of like a small community, but I knew that this was pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. And that's one of my favorite things to do, like personal development. I'm like a nerd about, and like just grow. Yeah, really get to know myself better. I just knew that it would be an important experience for me. And it sounded like you had that similar intuition probably earlier than I was, which is awesome because not everyone has that desire.
Yeah, I think it's easy to even not allow yourself to have space to have a desire. You like the desire can be there, or things can feel like a dream or a fantasy or something that's just like, oh, if I could. But when your fears and anxiety, like anxiety is its own identity. And
Mm.
when anxiety is really leading your life, like you're not going to be moving in the way of your desire. So
Mhm.
being really young at that time worked in my favor because I wasn't thinking that thoroughly. I wasn't that mature. I wasn't like, is this a good idea? What are the risks for this? Is somebody gonna hurt me? No, I was naive. I was oblivious. I was just thinking I'm just here for a good time. Like I'm just like, wow, this sounds cool. I've always wanted to travel. Like, this sounds really nice. Being naive actually kind of like helped me in that sense. And I will tell you, when I was leaving my job, it was so much negativity because I don't know if you know this, but like some nursing environments are not the healthiest. They can be very catty, very clicky. Not all of them, mostly, like aside from my first job, all of my nursing experiences have been positive because I
Mm.
have made sure of them to be, or I don't stay. Um,
Yeah. Facts.
but when I was leaving, I heard, you're going to regret it. The grass isn't always greener. People love to say that when you're leaving a job, you are going to hear the grass isn't always greener. And and I'm like, it's green where I water it. And
Yeah, yeah.
and they were just like, just speaking a lot of negativity and trying to plant seeds of doubt in my mind because they wouldn't do this. They wouldn't make the move. They don't have the
Yes.
courage to do it. Thankfully, again, I was so naive and so oblivious that I was like, what do I have to lose? I can always come back, so on and so forth. And I think so. It was a really good window of time for me to take advantage of, even though it was difficult. Also, as you were talking, I was and explaining like your time solo, it reminded me that being around strangers really allows us to like see versions of ourselves that we won't see if we're always with people that we know and in long-term relationships. So like that was another thing I really gained from that experience was the ability to get to know myself through the lens of other people. When people
Mm.
meet you for the first time, especially in work environments, the more they see you, they're going to start saying things to you like, you're always happy, or you always got an attitude, or you this. Like, you're going to naturally hear feedback because that's what we do as humans. So, like, shifting environments and putting yourself somewhere unfamiliar, it really does help you grow because strangers will help you grow.
That's so interesting. I never really thought about that, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's so accurate. And I'm sorry to hear that you were met with that negativity when you were leaving. But you're right. A lot of people project their fears and like insecurities onto others. So it's important to distinguish that and be secure in yourself and your own decisions. Like, you thought it through. It wasn't just like a random thing you decided to do one day. Like making a career change is a big life change. So I imagine you put a lot of thought into it, and you're an intentional person. So I know you put a lot of thought and intention behind it. But yeah, it sounds like a majority of your nursing career, understandably so, you were on the front lines. It was a tasking job, long hours. You were anxious, sometimes like out of tune with your body, especially like traveling. That's a whole other layer of anxiety you talked about. And so like, I'm thinking about, there's usually like a specific moment where we break down in our careers and we're like, I can't keep living like this. And I'm wondering, did you have that moment? And if so, what did that breakdown moment look like for you in your nursing career?
So fast forwarding more further into my career, because I kind of transitioned between travel nursing and then just like relocating. So at one point I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and I was working, actually this is my favorite job I ever worked. I worked at Grady Hospital downtown, and it was like the peak of my career. Nobody can tell you shit after you work there. It like piques your confidence to such a degree. And you really are serving the community because it's a city hospital. So I was having like a really good experience, but then things started to shift within the work environment. And I'm sure we have like all experienced that, where like things are going great. You're like, this is the thing. And then there's variables, staff changes, management changes, company changes, different things kind of happen, and you're on the receiving end of it. So it can be difficult, and it felt difficult for me to be in a space where I loved something, but just was not being treated well. The pressure became so high. I'm talking people are crashing on you left and right. If anybody knows anything about Atlanta, if anybody knows anything about Grady, it's an extremely high pressure environment. And the pressure was just becoming so heavy on me that I was crying coming home from work. I was sobbing in the car. I was like, what is this? This cannot be life. And so I ultimately decided that I would shift, because I couldn't allow the company to really just constantly dictate the way that I was living my life. Because when you're feeling that way at work, you're not a different person when you're off. You know, you're spending majority of your time feeling unhappy or miserable. And then when you're off, you're still carrying some of that with you. I don't remember what exactly happened, but I have this vivid image of myself, actually recorded myself, and I was crying and I was trying to like share this story of like how painful it was to be a nurse in this environment and so on and so forth. I never shared it because I just never did. But I remember like the fact that I even thought to pull out my phone and record myself, because I'm not somebody who typically does that, was a huge indicator that something needed to change.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing and being so honest. Well, first of all, the breakdown crying, I think a lot of listeners, and myself included, can relate to that at some point in their career. Second of all, my reaction to your work life or your work person or persona is not different than your personal or your home life person or persona. That is so key. There's like this separation that people think about in the environments that I've been in, where it's like work and life, work-life balance, we hear, right? Whatever. That exists, and I talk about it too. But people think like their person is like separate. It's like a work person and like a personal or like a home person. And I'm like, no, you're the same person. We're all human. And there's no way we spend so much time at work, like all of these hours. There is no way that none of that seeps into your personal life. It's your day, whatever career you're in. When you spend 8+ hours a day, like doing that, and you don't have a lot of other time, like to do other things during the day, that is a majority of your day. And you can't just switch off your emotions. Like it doesn't work like that. So like, obviously it's going to carry over and like affect your day, whether that's positively or negatively. It's really crucial for people to hear that, because like, if you are that miserable in your career where you're working all the time, you're going in on a daily basis, whatever, 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week, and you're crying every day, or you're crying on your commute to, from, and your nervous system is just so messed up. Like it's not healthy as a baseline for your entire health, for your entire life. Like it is affecting you. I have seen careers age people. I actually previously saw, and I don't know if I've said this publicly either, something that discouraged me from climbing the corporate ladder at Deloitte was one of my bosses. I looked at her and she was prematurely graying. She was in her 30s. She was stressed out all the time. She had gray hair. Well, not gray. You know, there were gray hairs. Her hair
Mhm.
was lovely, but you could just see the impact and like speeding her aging. And I was like, I do not want that for future me. I do not want that. I want the exact opposite. And it sent me running in the opposite direction.
Yeah, you're so right. It's not that separate. I mean, do you have to be 100% of yourself at work? Like, no, you don't have to walk in with every detail of your personal life, but you need to be yourself all the time. It's just how, like, you would have different friends and you have different versions of you that might be with your different types of friends based on the friend, but you're still yourself. You're not creating in a totally different identity or a mask for you to be in this other space, because you're just creating more disconnection in your body. So you think your job is the problem, but really it's that you're not fully connected within, and your job is part of creating that for you. So it's just like, even if you get a new job, you've already created that disconnection in your body. Like, you need to get aligned within so that your job is synergistic with yourself. And I understand that jobs are a means of income first and foremost, and they define it as a privilege. And then they look at it like, I don't have the privilege to choose a job that I enjoy. But then we have to talk about belief systems. Like, it always comes back to self.
That
Yeah.
was really well said. I think a lot of people need to hear that. So thank you. Okay, I actually hate sweating when I sleep, and I'm a hot sleeper. Cozy Earth solved this problem with its bamboo sheet set, which provides cooling comfort and unparalleled softness. And I got you 21% off. Just use my code TRUTH at checkout at cozyearth.com. If you use code TRUTH, TRUTH, you'll get 21% off. And if you forget, use the link in the show notes for all the details. Apparently, Oprah has included Cozy Earth on her favorite things list for 7 consecutive years, so you know it's got to be good. More Labs Morning Recovery is the #1 alcohol recovery supplement that helps you wake up clear-headed and refreshed. It comes in handy whether you've had a late night out, a long work day, or just need a boost. Their clinically proven formula is powered by DHM, which is a plant-based ingredient that helps the liver process toxins efficiently, fights fatigue, and reduces sluggishness. Enjoy 25% off with promo code NAKED at morelabs.com. It's promo code NAKED, NAKED, at morelabs.com for 25% off, or use the link in the show notes. So when you were struggling with this anxiety in your nursing career, you found sound therapy and breath work at some point. For anyone listening who has no clue what these things are, can you break them down for us, please?
Yeah, of course. So, I just mentioned that it always comes back to self, but how do you know yourself? How do you know who you are? How do you know what you want? How do you not be the person that you were raised to be if that totally wasn't in alignment? So, meditation, being like an umbrella term, is this practice of observing yourself, being centered, being grounded, being present. It's the practice of non-attachment. But there's different forms of meditation. Sound therapy is the intentional use of acoustics to create a desired state. So your desired state could be relaxation. So I would play instruments a certain way that would help your brain and your body come into a state of relaxation. It does that by brain chemicals, hormones, it would be like a whole scientific bodily process of that. So there are many different instruments that you use to do a sound bath, and every practitioner facilitates it differently. But the point that I really want to bring home is that when you go to a sound bath, you're not just having a mental experience, you're having a physical experience. So it's not just working on your mind, like, I'm relaxing now. It's the sound vibrations, and we are vibrational beings. So it's the vibrations that are coming from the instruments, creating a frequency that your body is attuning to. And then if you are really dropped in, then you're also getting your mind out of the way, so your body can have the experience with these instruments. And from there, it's just like everyone has a different experience. Sometimes you're relaxed and sometimes you feel like let me put it in the words of someone else. We did one last night, and when we were done, this girl woke up. She was like, whoa, I was just transported to another place. It's just cool because it shows you like the potential of what's within when you like kind of let go. So sound baths are a way to have a meditation with your brain and body and consciousness.
I like that. Yeah, I love that. I've done a couple sound baths, and I think my first one wasn't that long ago. It was last year, towards the end of the year. And it was a very interesting experience. I love learning about energy and stuff. But okay, so talk a little bit more about breath work too, and how that calms our nervous systems. Because sometimes people who are unfamiliar, I feel like they just think about it. They're like, okay, breathing, like,
Yeah.
hello, I do that naturally, like, whatever.
Yeah.
What's the big whoop about that?
Yeah, so thank you, because breath work has truly made the difference in my life. When we talk about this big picture of like my life and anxiety and all these things, breath work made such a difference because it brought me fully back into my body in ways I didn't realize I was disconnected from my body. So breath work, because it has become more of a popular term, I really want to dwindle it down to the most base definition that breath work is the intentional manipulation of your breath. Because your breath is your nervous system, it's connected to the part of your nervous system that happens without you actually trying. But then you can also use the other part of your nervous system to try a certain kind of way. When you are being intentional about the way that you breathe, you can shift your brain chemistry and your biology to take you into different states of consciousness. At the most base level, when you're stressed, anxious, depressed, feeling something that just doesn't feel good to your body. So now you're trying to separate from it. You're probably having even more anxiety. And you slow down and you start with presence, just acknowledging yourself in the space. And then you take deep inhales in through your nose, expanding your chest and your belly, and then fully exhaling out. What you're doing is you're signaling to your body very organically. So you're using the natural mechanisms in your body to signal relaxation, or rest and digest, as a lot of people know. When you do breath work, you're signing up to work a little bit with that breath. So depending on the type of breath work you're signing up for, the guide or the facilitator will have you breathe at different patterns, different intensities. You might hold your breath at certain intervals because you're shifting your brain chemistry intentionally for some sort of desired outcome. The more you go into breath work and try different methods, you'll actually start to drop into your subconscious self. And that's when a lot of for lack of better words, repressed or buried, or the things you don't give a lot of attention to on purpose will begin to surface. Because as we know, like, how many times have we done something subconsciously? So clearly it's in our mind somewhere. So when you do breath work, you're bringing a lot of presence to your body and to your mind and to your inner self, like the true inner self. So there's varying levels of how you can have a breathwork experience. And so as you can tell, I'm like super passionate about it because your breath is your life force energy. You know, if you believe in a higher power, this is your direct connection to your higher power. It's the first thing you do when you come into this life. It's the last thing you do. You know, as a nurse, we can have everything else fail, but when the breath fails, that's when we really call it. So to me, it's evidence of the fact that this is our inner anchor. And there's a lot you can do with it to incorporate it in your life and to serve you in different ways. But 100%, like anxiety, depression, the fluctuations of emotion that we experience in any given day, it's so helpful, and it doesn't have to be complicated.
That's awesome. I also
Yeah.
never thought about it as the connection to whatever higher power you believe in. And like, I understand from your healthcare background that you explaining that's the first thing we do in life, and that is the last thing we do before like your life ends. And you putting that into perspective like that makes a whole lot of sense and makes me think about it differently.
Yeah, that's really special. I'm so glad that you're able to connect it, because that's so important. You have to understand like how the tool is going to serve you, and you have to create value around the tool for you to utilize it when you're coming up in spaces where you're feeling anxious and challenged in different capacities. If you can understand why a tool is going to serve you, then you're more likely to utilize it in hard times.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to believe in it, because if you don't believe in it, then it's
Yeah.
not going to work.
And I guess to that point, that's why these breathwork and sound healing are so useful, because you get real time evidence. Yeah.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage anyone who is the least bit curious out there who's listening right now to try it if you haven't, because it's
Yeah.
a very interesting, like, I feel like unique experience that I think is getting more and more popular in like mainstream culture. I mean, different practitioners are more experienced or practiced than others, obviously. There's like the performative wellness vibes out there, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like real holistic wellness and the practices that will ground and calm your nervous system.
Very much so. That's what it's all about. When you show up to a class of any sort, you really want to be showing up for yourself. You really want to be present in this space with a lot of self-awareness. How did this make me feel? What came up for me? What can I do with the information I got from myself today, from what I saw or what I realized? You don't want to just show up to perform it, to check it off the box or like say, yeah, I went to a breathwork class and then like I had this experience and then go along life in the same direction. You want to utilize those experiences, a really concentrated way of having self-awareness.
Yes, exactly. So once you started like consistently using these practices, how did your relationship with work change?
In the beginning, I was working and I felt like I was one version of myself there. And then I was going to the classes and I felt like I was having really great experiences there. But I can't say that it felt so cohesive, that a lot was changing, was like translating to the working environment or my time outside of work when I was like recovering from work. Once I discovered breath work and I literally did what I just talked about, took that self-awareness to better understand myself. And I started to learn how to integrate those tools into my day. So this is when things really changed for me. I also worked with a teacher that taught me how to use my words to formulate prayers, but like not in a super religious way, in a speaking the best possible outcome kind of way, in a very high belief kind of way. So she taught me how to like speak in certain ways that would really ground myself and manifest a little bit. So I would start my day with a breath. I would literally like be in the car, just pull it up, and I would like put one hand on my heart and one on my belly, or maybe two, it doesn't matter. I really don't like to stress the details. So, we don't want to overthink it. But overall, just to like create that nervous system connection, I would take a big deep breath in through my nose and like exhaling out of my body. I would do that maybe 3 times. It's a very quick experience. And then I would set an intention and it would sound something like, I really want to call in everyone who loves me and supports me. I want to speak to God, my angels, my ancestors, all the loving beings who support me. And I would also speak on the work environment too, because I want us all to have a cohesive experience, not just me. So I would speak to us as a community. And I would say, I hope that everyone in this space has a good day. I hope the patients have good outcomes. I hope that there's boundaries in this space. I know I'm going super in detail here, but I'm really just trying to highlight whatever your specific environment is, like what would be the best possible outcome for all of you guys? What would have to happen? So I spoke all of that. And that like 5 minutes really made a difference. So I weaved in all of the tools. I weaved in the presence that I was having when I would go to a sound bath before I became a facilitator, like when I was showing up. And then I weaved in the breath and so I could like calm down internally. And then I weaved in intentional words and all of that. And going into the rest of the day though, because sometimes you do that and then you get to work and it's just some bullshit. I am really big on incorporating the moments too. So how grounded can I stay to my body? The breath helps with that. And then if I am still coming up against a lot of challenges, can I duck off into the bathroom? Can I take my lunch in my car? Is there grass nearby? I hate to say it, but there is some self-accountability in being able to grow through this experience. Self-accountability, taking yourself into a different space so that you can use those tools again. And it helped shift a lot for me, big picture.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I come from a totally different career background. I was in corporate consulting. And I imagine it's like this in the healthcare world as well, and other industries and other careers, where it's like you're at work and it's hard to take yourself out of that environment, even for like a few minutes to meditate or do breath work or whatever it is. And you're just there all day and you're constantly surrounded by like different stimulation, and then different challenges pop up, and then meetings. Like in my world, it was like back-to-back meetings or whatever. Like I wasn't saving lives, but sometimes the way people treated it made it seem like we were saving lives. And I was like, whoa, everyone needs to calm down. Like we're sending an email, we're talking about a presentation here. Like people can get really stressed, and we live in a society that kind of praises hustle. We live in this hustle culture. And so people are like, go, go, go. Like we got to move. We got to make progress. We got to perform. We got to meet these deadlines. So it just like can naturally get your heart rate up and your nervous system like kind of out of whack. So I remember like when I was new, I didn't really like take breaks. Like, I just felt like I had to be like accountable at all times and present, like, so my manager could see me. So I was like working, like that kind of stuff. And I had this coworker, there were wellness rooms in the office when we were in the office, and he would go take naps in there. And I remember he was the only one on the team of like 50 that did that. And I remember like people used to judge him. I used to judge him for it. I just didn't understand it at the time. And later on in my career, I mean, we were sent home for a while. I worked remote primarily. And then right before I left in 2025, I was going in the office like once a week. And I actually started to utilize those wellness rooms more to take a little 5 or 10 minute meditation break if I was like feeling really stressed or just like I needed a pause in the day. And it's actually so worth it. And it really like affects the rest of your day and how it goes. So I like how you call out just little breaks, and it doesn't have to be anything big, like 5 minutes of breathing or setting an intention or stating positive affirmations or just like what you would call formulating a prayer with words. But it is really important, and thinking about the greater good of your team, nonetheless, humanity. Like, we are all connected. And so I think it's naive to say we don't affect each other's moods. Like, I have read stuff that it's like, don't let other people's shit basically make you have a bad mood or like affect your day. But I think to some extent, the way other people react and interact with you does affect your mood. It could be a lot or a little bit, but you want like the collective vibrations to be high so that you can all benefit and be the healthiest and be the most calm, and your nervous system be regulated together. Because if there's like a lot of irregulated nervous systems together, yours is, I feel like by default, going to be out of whack.
Yeah. You're going to have to work harder to stay regulated versus if you're like all regulated, it's going to be easier for everyone to be regulated. I live in the world of energy, that everything is energy. So of course, you don't have to be dependent on the people around you for you to have a good day, but you can set the intention for all of us to have a good day. But hey, if they don't have a good day, I still set the intention to have a good day. That type of positive energy, the universe loves that. The universe loves people who like to also pour into the ones around them. It's going to funnel through you even more. So, and I say that as like somebody who has like lived it and seen it in action over years of self-development. It reminded me of something when you were talking about Deloitte. I am in corporate now. I work for pharma, not directly, but indirectly. So I represent, I should say. And when I started my job, the first like few months, I remember having this moment, and it was the end of the day. It was 5 p.m. I closed my laptop and I was like, this is why most of America is so miserable. I was like, if this is the life you live 5 days a week without any intentionality, without any of that grounding time, self-work time, meditation time, like if you truly show up and do this mindlessly, which I feel like so many people do, no wonder we're sick, because it will just suck your entire being. You won't feel like you have an identity. You won't feel like you can be healthy, because to your earlier point, it's not separate. It's majority of your life. It's majority of your attention, your skill set, all of it takes your creativity. All of these things are just not healthy for us. And so when I closed my laptop that day and like realized like how I had been living that week, making the switch into corporate and now working like 5 days a week, I said to myself, Shabnam, you have to be really intentional. You have to be really intentional. You need to amp up the structure a little bit, create a routine for yourself, because otherwise, you'll lose yourself in this system, because that's what it's designed to do. So I made myself, like, I opened a spreadsheet and I mapped out all this stuff. I created categories for all of my various needs, social needs, financial, wellness, blah, 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 blah. And I started to create personal system, because I refuse to get swallowed up.
Wow, good for you. Yeah, I think more people need to do that. And it is, you're right, the system isn't like built in a way that supports our overall health and well-being or like mindfulness at all. That could be a whole other podcast episode. I could go down like a rant on that. But I want to focus before we wrap up here on your brand. So you're now building this brand, Consciously Healing and Wellness Services. And I know like many of my listeners right now may feel stuck in a career that doesn't align with their values anymore. And I know that this brand that you're building aligns with your values. And so I'm wondering, what advice do you have for these people?
Oof, that's a really big question. First and foremost, you have to feel aligned within. Your career and everything else is reflecting you back to you. So, something I did in my career as I was pivoting, when I was really unhappy, I realized that the best things and the most aligned things were not going to come from anger, resentment, frustration, and escapism. So, I worked on myself first. I use the tools. I use somatic tools. I use therapy. I use coaches to help me understand internal alignment. And that means, what does Shabnam like to do? What does Lauren like to do? What does she enjoy? What makes her happy? What makes her unhappy? What really grinds her gears? What are her core values as a person? You're defining them, not your job. So that's, now you've created a little separation between yourself and your job, even if you're naming that your job is not in alignment, but you do know what is in alignment. So now you've highlighted that. So I made sure to come to that place first. And then I said, I really want my next opportunity to come from a place of gratitude and not a place of anger. So then I really focused on gratitude. So now I'm creating a good energetic foundation for that next opportunity to come in an aligned fashion. And if you don't know who you are, then there's your first step. Who are you? What are your core values? Once you define them for yourself, then you can have faith and big on that, whatever that faith is in. But having some level of faith that the universe is now going to shift you into that alignment, because you're standing on business with yourself first. So it's law that the universe has to bring that in alignment to you, because your life is always going to mirror you. But if you're wavering within, like, this is kind of my value, but it's kind of not, then that's what's going to show up. If you can get as solid as you can within, as regulated as you can within, then that's going to be a great first step of like truly getting into alignment with your job as an external thing. So use your job as information, but it doesn't have to dictate you.
I like that. Yeah, you're right. Your job is information, and you have to make sure you're aligned within yourself first. And so the tools that I'm hearing you say that like people could take action and use is therapy, is coaching, like a life coach, would you say?
Yeah, people have various opinions on life coaches. I myself do too. So I would say, even with your therapist, if you are going to show up and invest in that type of help for yourself, I would be really upfront with what it is that you're looking for. I know this would also be a whole different podcast episode, but a mistake that I made in hiring coaches and therapists and different people was I kind of put a lot of trust in them, that they would just guide me to this right place. And over time, I realized that I wasn't showing up with, this is what I need. This is where I feel lost. I just kind of like showed up like, they'll guide me, which was a product of honestly my childhood conditioning. So there's a lot of ways that you can utilize resources, but if you can do a little bit of personal inventory and self-accountability through journaling, through being really honest about what you're unhappy about, and then bring that to your coaches and therapists and, other tools that you're using, then they can help guide you in the right direction.
Got it. Yeah, that is key. Thank you for sharing and distinguishing that. So my last question for you is, if you could go back to the previous version of yourself who was in the thick of the anxiety and the hustle, think nursing career, what is one thing that you'd tell her?
Ooh, so many things I would tell her. Man, I think I would tell her that she is much more powerful just because of who she is. She doesn't have to earn power. And by power, I don't mean ego power. I mean presence. I mean confidence. I mean worthiness is actually the word I'm coming to now. You're worthy and you are just enough as you are organically, even when you have more to learn. I would just tell her to stand up with her head held high with more confidence. You are in your power because you're here.
Yeah, that is so hard. It's so hard, I think, for us, especially as women. I have struggled with that. I know personally, just believing that I'm enough just as I am. And that's one of my morning affirmations that I say to myself in the mirror. And so I think it's a practice, and it comes with maturity. I think it comes with time, and it comes with self-development and utilizing these tools like meditation, journaling, getting aligned within yourself, and just like building your confidence over time. It takes work. It doesn't just like come passively. which I
Mm,
think my younger self didn't know
mm.
until I started putting in the work, until I hit like a low. And I was like, whoa, I got to change my life around. Like, I got to build up my confidence. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
So I think that's really critical for a lot of women out there and everyone to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. The nervous system needs experience. It needs evidence to build. It needs repetitiveness in order for certain
Mm.
things to get really ingrained and to be integrated into your identity. Having some nervousness and having a little bit of anxiety and having uncertainty is really, really normal. But when it becomes your identity, that's when, it's a problem because that's not who you really are. And a lot of us identify with anxiety as our identity. That's the most common thing I see with people is I'm so anxious. I'm just an anxious person. I'm just, I just always have anxiety. And that's the most common way we're taught to talk about ourselves. I think one of the greatest things I learned was creating separation from that by I'm experiencing a lot of anxiety right now. Anxiety is in the room right now. I think at one point I had this stage where I would give it a name so I can create a little separation from that and not embody it because words are really, really powerful.
Yeah, I need to do that better, honestly. Like, I still say like my anxiety and stuff. Actually, my favorite trend that I'm seeing right now on TikTok is like, I've seen a couple different women do this where they like make a little character, like Lizzie McGuire, like back in the day where she had that little character. They'll do creative things with videos where they like make a little character and they name it and it's their anxiety. And it's like, Sarah tells me to do this. Like, Sarah is experiencing this, blah, blah, blah. And that creates that separation.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I was just doing that verbally where I would like give it a little name or
Mm.
sometimes I would even use my own name and just say like, okay, Shabnam's feeling really anxious right now, or like, this is present for me. And now I'm like building a better relationship with it and I'm understanding it. And, foundationally anxiety is being afraid of the unknown. So there's like a lot of tools you can use to manage anxiety and better understand it and better resolve it. Cause most of the time it's connected to all these other experiences that you're having, and the more you can drop into self awareness, like we've talked about, the more you can understand, like, oh, I wasn't really feeling anxious. I actually was like feeling really sad because I missed my friend. Or, it can be so many different things.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom, all of your insights. This was an awesome conversation. I really enjoyed catching up. I want to give you the platform to just share where can listeners find you and try out your wellness services and follow your journey.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So right now I'm kind of moving throughout the DMV and hosting classes in different studios. I'm in Georgetown at a studio called RN Balance and I do sound baths there and I'll have different workshops popping up in this space as well. There's also a lot of other great facilitators in that space too. So I recommend trying different people to find your style. But also, I have a cacao sound bath, breath work, like integration type of experience that's coming up next month at Georgetown Massage. I'll be co hosting that with my friend Isa. She's has a brand called Cacao Mexico. And then let me give
Cool.
you my Instagram. That is probably like the best way to stay connected with my events. And it's called Consciously because I believe that all of what we do in our subconscious, we want to shift that to come into our conscious. That's how we really change our life. And so that's spelled Khansciously. So consciously, but with my last name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. That's great
Yeah.
branding. And I will put everything in the show notes so
Yeah.
listeners can easily find you.
I am really big on education. So all of my classes have somewhat of a informational component to them so that you can really understand like what the modality is and how to utilize it, how to integrate it. And because of that, if anyone wants to just send me a message, like we can hop on a call, we can talk about like a little bit about what you're going through and if this modality is fit for you. I'm really big on being present with you. So if anything sounds intriguing or you're just curious, but you're not ready to take the plunge, just send me a message because I'd be happy to support you.
I love that. That's very generous of you. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to The Naked Truth with Lauren. If you like the show, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review it on whatever platform you're listening or watching. It helps other women just like you to find the show. And if you have a friend who needs to hear this episode, share it with them. If you want to hear more from me, sign up for my community gratitude practice newsletter at thenakedtruthwithlauren.com. You'll receive a quick dose of gratitude every week to help shift your focus from what's missing to what's meaningful in your life. And you can follow along on Instagram at thenakedtruth.pod for more inspiring content. Catch you on the next episode.